£17,773. That's how much the average person in the UK has in savings. And in this video, we'll explain how you can start flipping properties in the UK with £17,000. It's simple, it's cheap, and it's great for beginners. But not everybody will be able to do this, and I'll reveal why later in the video. If you don't have this much in savings yet, then keep watching till the end for a bonus tip where I'll reveal an easy way to build your pot fast. Here's what we're not doing. We're not using bridging finance, we're not using private investors, and we're not using lease option agreements. This is just you, your savings, and a bit of grit and patience. So, here is the cheapest way to get started flipping properties. Step 1. We're going to use the simplest method of acquiring a property, a straightforward residential mortgage. If you're limited with cash, the simplest way to flip a property is to buy your own house to do it up, so you live in it while you do the refurb. The key is that this should be the only house you own, so you're either a first-time buyer or, if you already own a home, you sell it to buy this new property to flip. This method works well for a few reasons, but there are also risks you need to look out for, which we cover at the end of the video. But first, let's look at the most important benefit of this method, and that's lower deposits. When you buy a property on a residential mortgage, the deposits needed are much lower compared to buy-to-let mortgages or bridging finance. For buy-to-let mortgages, you typically need at least 25%, and sometimes even more just to meet the rental stress tests of banks. Bridging loans also require a similar amount in deposits. For a property valued at £160,000, you'd need around £40,000 just for your deposit using these methods. But residential mortgages typically need a minimum of 10%, but sometimes you can actually get 5% mortgages too. If a property is valued at £160,000, a 10% deposit would require £16,000, but a 5% deposit would only require £8,000. This leaves you a fair chunk of change to get started on a refurb. Deposits are affected largely by house prices, and these are always changing. If properties go up in price 10%, then your deposit needs to go up by 10% for the same house. You can join the weekly Beacon property newsletter for free, where you can stay up to date with all the property news, including changes in house prices. We look at changes to landlords, how mortgage rates are changing, and how house prices are changing too. Oh, and we like a bit of fun sometimes too. Another thing that normally eats into profits is stamp duty. If you bought a £160,000 property as a second property, you'd be paying about £4,800 just in stamp duty. But if you're a first-time buyer, then you won't pay stamp duty unless the property is worth more than £425,000. And if you already own a home but you sell it to live in the new purchase, then you won't pay stamp duty unless the new property is worth more than £250,000. So in essence, you save about £4,800 just from stamp duty by using this method. Another tax that normally gets you in flipping property is capital gains tax. But if you are just selling your own home that you live in, you don't pay income tax and you don't pay capital gains tax. But this is only if you also meet all the other requirements for private residence relief. But don't treat this video as tax advice. Remember to always seek professional advice. Another benefit of this method is the lack of time constraints. When it's just a house that you're living in, you don't have to worry about time as much. Normally, in a flip, you want it done ASAP, so you're not paying extra money in addition to the rent or mortgage you pay for the property you live in. But in this scenario, it's where you live anyways, so you're not paying for two properties at the same time. This means you have time on your side. Another benefit to this is that you don't need to do the whole refurb straight away. Every time you save up enough money to do more of the property, you can just do the bit that you can afford. The other benefit of time is that you're in a better place as a seller because you won't be rushed to sell, and it gives you time to learn properly. Learning is a big factor of why this method is great for beginners. Since you're not on a strict schedule to finish the refurb within a few months, the risk is lowered. This means you can learn all the ins and outs of a refurb while taking your time. And don't underestimate how big this can be. When people rush, they cut corners. And when people cut corners, mistakes happen. And when there's big amounts of money at play, you don't want to do this. Since you have time, you can learn what you need to learn about each part of the refurb without the time pressure. And most importantly, do it right. So in the next project that you do, you'll be a lot more confident, since you were able to take your time and learn the correct way of doing things. But what if something does still go wrong? Because something always does in a refurb. Well, even then, you have time on your side. If a tradesperson takes 3 months instead of the 1 month that they promised, it's an issue, but not as big of an issue since you're not on the clock to get everything done and cash in as fast as possible. Let's go over some more risks and requirements so you don't go into this blind. The risks and who can do this method. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are some risks, and like we said earlier, not everybody can do it. The first one is the market falling. If you're going to take 2 years to refurb the property by doing a bit at a time, you could get unlucky with the market. If the market was falling for the 2 years that you were doing the refurb, then this will eat into your potential profits. Tradespeople. Look, it's your first project. There's a good chance you can pick the wrong tradespeople. Even experienced developers get it wrong. You can at least use sites like Trade to help make your decision, but always look at reviews carefully and try to get referrals too. Another risk is that you just get stuck. If you're planning on doing the refurb by saving up a bit at a time while you live there, that's fine, until your financial circumstances change. If you take a major hit to your income suddenly, then you won't have much leftover money to put towards the refurb. This could leave you stuck with a half-finished house with not enough money to complete it. And don't forget that you are living in this house. Another risk is the cost of labour and materials. If the cost of labour and materials goes up, then the budget that you initially planned for completely goes out the window. And if you're already struggling to save enough to do extra parts of the refurb, then this could put you in a situation where the refurb takes a lot longer than you thought, or you simply can't afford it at all. Of course, you can do it yourself to cut costs, but if the cost of materials goes up, then that can still set you back. Now remember, we said that not everybody can do this method, so now we'll go through the requirements to be able to do it. Patience and grit. Look, if you don't have the patience and grit to put up with a live-in refurb, don't do it. Even if you think there's an off chance you won't like it, it's probably best not to risk it. Of course, there are ways you can somewhat get around this. For example, you do up a room and put up with the mess and awkwardness that it creates. Then just take a few months break before doing another part of the house. Just pace yourself. Another requirement is income. If you plan to spend most of your savings on the deposit and fees for the house, you need to make sure that you can save a bit every month going forward to spend on the refurb. If you can only save £50 a month, don't bother. If you can save at least a few hundred a month, then you're more on the right track. The last thing you want is a refurb project that's going to take you 10 years. Location. You're going to live in this house, but with £17,000, you're going to be limited in what you can afford. You can easily get places in the north, but you're going to struggle if you live in the south. But if you can't move there because of family or work, then this simply isn't an option for you. Your current housing situation is important for this method too. This method works best if you are either a first-time buyer or if you're going to sell the house you currently live in to move into the new refurb house. This is so you can get the benefits of reducing your tax burden when it comes to capital gains tax and stamp duty. But don't forget, we have a bonus tip for you too. If you don't have enough savings to buy a house, the most important thing is to get your money up. One way to do this while also learning about property is to do property deal sourcing and deal packaging. This is where you find property deals for other investors and sell the deal to them for anywhere between £2,000 and £6,000. Just a few successful deals will help you build your cash pot pretty fast. But remember that you need to stay compliant, and this does require work. If you found this video useful in any way, make sure to like and subscribe so we know to make content just like this.